Thank you, Secretary General Lewis, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here with you today at the inaugural Ministerial Alliance. So really appreciate the opportunity. And I want to clarify one thing. Chris introduced me as Hewlett Packard. It's actually Hewlett Packard Enterprise. So we're actually two companies. We split about 7 years ago now. And so I can't help you with your printer or PC issues. We make networking equipment, data center equipment, cloud services, but we are not Hewlett Packard. I want to thank the ministers from Botswana and Lesotho and Mozambique and South Africa and Zimbabwe for framing this so well, because I was going to come up here and have a bunch of comments, and I've now going to kind of try to reorient my comments to address some of the challenges that you so well articulated and positioned here. So I want to thank you for that. So without further ado, I will say, just by one last point of introduction, one of the reasons I was so excited to be here today was when I found out that a big focus of this event is really around affordability and universal access for broadband, because unlicensed technologies and Wi-Fi, I believe, play an incredibly essential role in achieving those goals, along with other technologies such as mobile broadband and satellite services. I smiled when the minister from Botswana meant to say Wi-Fi and he said fiber instead, and then corrected, because they really are synonymous, frankly, these days. And the reason is sort of what we're illustrating here on the slide, which is that these are showing some statistics from Europe. They just happen to be the most recent ones that I have access to. This is showing the percentage of the internet traffic that goes over the fixed network. That's the slide or the chart on the left-hand side. And basically for Germany and the UK, call it 93 to 95% of internet traffic is going over some sort of fixed connection, and that leaves 5 to 7% going over a mobile broadband connection. So that's just sort of the percentages and how they're distributed. And then on the right, it's showing, and for the UK, and this is from Ofcom's data, just how the fixed consumption has tracked since 2013 through 21. And you can just certainly, see that steady increase. Number of speakers already talked about the pandemic impacts and how that really brought home to everybody the importance of unlicensed spectrum, or license-exempt spectrum, I should say, and Wi-Fi, as we all learn to work, live, learn from home. And I think that was pretty much a global experience that we all had. So, that's something we certainly all have experienced. One of the things that occurred to me this morning is Minister Scully was talking about some of the UK's initiatives. He was talking about gigabit being a goal, and now indeed we see operators in Europe talking about, and the US talking about 10 gigabit fixed broadband connectivity. And so as the capacity of these fixed connections increases and as more fiber gets deployed, it's important to think about, I need to have something at the end of that to provide the connectivity to the end device. And indeed, in Europe, 92.3% of this fixed traffic ends up flowing over a Wi-Fi connection to the end device. So as fixed increases in capacity, Wi-Fi needs to be able to increase in capacity along with it. And really the same is true for mobile broadband services. So we've had a few sessions already on mobile broadband. I would say that Wi-Fi and 5G, 6G, 7G, whatever comes along, they will continue to be complementary technologies. There are occasional squabbles that we may have over spectrum, but at a technology level, they get along well, and so does satellite. I would throw it into the mix here as well. So this is just showing that as the generations of 3GPP technologies have moved along, the dependence on the Wi-Fi networks to carry some of this increased data traffic has actually gone up. It hasn't gone down, it's actually increased. So that is the amount of traffic from the mobile devices carried over the Wi-Fi network is increasing as we've gone from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And I would say that's because of the move from, circuit switch voice-centric networks to packet-oriented data networks, the emergence of the app ecosystem. David talked about the prevalence of streaming now and how people are consuming that, on bigger devices with faster processors and GPUs. And they're tending to do that indoors quite often. And indoors, mobile broadband coverage is not always great, and Wi-Fi tends to be a little bit more predictable. Just showing on the right some of the countries that have more of a dependence on mobile broadband, and I don't think this is really surprising to anyone, given some of the challenges that we just heard about. But again, bottom line, mobile broadband and Wi-Fi are both very complementary. And I would highlight again that even though I don't have a slide because of time, and I'm cognizant of time, I could easily put up another slide here talking about how satellite and Wi-Fi are complementary. And we've heard from a few people, I think it was the minister from Mozambique and then Isabel, talking about how satellite broadband services are often then ultimately delivered to the end device over a Wi-Fi connection. So whether it's fixed mobile, whether it's fixed broadband, mobile broadband, satellite broadband, or even fixed wireless access over 5G, oftentimes what you'll see is there's one little leg at the very end. That last meter is a Wi-Fi connection, right? So okay, I think I've made that point. Here we go. So in terms of the whole point about affordability and universal access, I would contend that Wi-Fi as a technology, as a Wi-Fi wireless technology, is unmatched in terms of its affordability, flexibility, and its ubiquity. There's some stats here from the Wi-Fi Alliance, and these were actually from last year. I think it was the October timeframe. But there's 18 billion Wi-Fi devices out in the market today. They were 4.4 shipped just last year. I think they're at about 5.3 or something like that for this year. So the volume of Wi-Fi equipment and the mass market ecosystem that exists for Wi-Fi gives it both a ubiquity and a cost point, which is very hard to match. There's been a lot of conversation about device costs, which I certainly understand. And one of the things that I would contend is that, Wi-Fi is a particular technology, really, IEEE 802.11, if you will. It has a different licensing and technology overhead compared to 3GPP IMT technologies. So that means that a device that just has a Wi-Fi radio, it tends to be much less expensive than a device which has a Wi-Fi radio and a LTE or 5G NR radio, or typically both. So, I mean, I was just looking online, and the latest iPads, it's about a $200 difference between the Wi-Fi only version and the cellular plus Wi-Fi version. On the Galaxy Samsung side, it's about 150 to 200 pounds. So some of you have to do the currency conversion, but there is a premium for the cellular technology, and some of that's just the RF front end, some of it's the IPR that licensing that goes along with that. But again, on the tablet side, approximately 90% of the tablets that are sold are Wi-Fi only versus Wi-Fi plus cellular. So I think that's a strong statement. I carry 3 devices when I travel. One of them has a cellular radio. All of them have a Wi-Fi radio. In my home, I've got somewhere about 20 different devices that connect to my Wi-Fi network. And I have I've got my security panel for my security system. That has a cellular connection. I'm not even sure if it's 2G or 3G, but it's a cellular connection. So I have one cellular connected device, and I've got about 20 Wi-Fi connected devices. So I was pleased to hear the minister from Mozambique talk about IoT as an initiative, because it's something that's another buzzword that we really haven't been talking about too much at this event. But what we found is Wi-Fi and unlicensed technologies, including Bluetooth, tend to be the predominant IoT technologies because they're so economical and they're so low cost to implement in all sorts of consumer devices. So I'm going to move along. I know I've got limited time here. So the point of this slide, and I am going to talk about spectrum, the mobile and the satellite speakers both alluded to it, and I'm certainly going to as well. The point of the slide here is all of the great things that I've talked about that we've been able to achieve with unlicensed, or I keep saying unlicensed, I should say license exempt, so apologies. All the things we've been able to accomplish with license exempt and with Wi-Fi is really in spite of the fact that we haven't had any significant allocations of mid-band spectrum in 2 decades, right? So 2.4 gigahertz back in 1985, and I'm sort of using the FCC in the US as the starting points for these dates. And then around 2000 was when the 5 gigahertz bands were largely opened up, and that kind of rolled out around the world. And it was only in 2020 that first the US FCC opened the 6 gigahertz band, which Chris talked about. In the US, they opened the full 1200 megahertz from 5925 to 7125. So that started in April of 2020. It's been rolling out now for about 3 years. And last slide, this is where we are as of today. So the good news is that we've actually seen unprecedented rollout of this technology globally, or this band, I should say, globally. So 61 countries, over 2 billion citizens. I highlighted the green as the US starting point, and then the yellow ones are essentially all the decisions in the last 12 months. So there's been some great decisions. Mexico actually just made an announcement either Thursday, I think it was Thursday of last week for the band. So this is all great. There's a huge ecosystem that has formed around this. So Intel is maintaining a device tracker for devices that have either been certified, announced, authorized for Wi-Fi 6E, which is the Wi-Fi 6 generation operating in the 6 gigahertz band. Don't blame me, I didn't come up with that term, but Wi-Fi 6E. So Intel's tracking those devices, and there's over 1,200 of them now in the market. About 300 are being added every quarter. So really excited about how this is going. Wi-Fi Alliance tracks the certifications for Wi-Fi 6E, and we have gotten to they got to 500 Wi-Fi 6E certified devices in half of the time that it took to get to that number of 5 gigahertz devices when the 5 gigahertz bands were opened up 20 years ago. So again, I think that just kind of proves how critical everybody perceives Wi-Fi to be at this point in time. The pandemic really brought that home. Look forward to hearing what the other panelists have to say. And just want to say, I thought Isabel made some really good points about we need to have a comprehensive approach to these technologies. I think Chris was alluding to this as well. So as you consider spectrum policy, I would just encourage you to take a comprehensive, holistic approach. 5G needs spectrum, satellite needs spectrum, Wi-Fi needs spectrum as well, and you can't leave any of them out of your calculus. Thank you.